Hey guys, how is it going? Can't believe you're reaching the end of the road, man, today. And obviously you have the reviews in a few days, but yeah, dude, it goes so fast. Yeah, interesting. So for today, yesterday I was asked like to explore some of the teeth, right? Like to see like the shaders that I'm using. It's the kind of stuff that like everything else with my old models, it's like even this model, the current model, probably like in a few weeks are going to be very unsatisfied with it. But the teeth, I mean, like the ones that I did like for both Jessica and what's that, like Stan Winston, it's still kind of like needs quite a bit of work, it's like to make it look better. But I can use as a as a reference, obviously, and share what I have in here. But I was also thinking about today, since it's the last one, to keep kind of like more like an open forum, I guess. So I'm gonna start with the teeth, explaining, doing the whole thing, like exploring the meshes that I used and the shaders and all that stuff. But then after that, instead of like waiting like a full hour, it's like for open questions and answers, you can just keep like an open forum, and then you guys feel free to ask me anything that I can try to help. I mean, like if it's something related to some old model or my current model, if you want me to open any scenes and show you how I have things set up for certain things, I can do that. And also, yeah, anything even like not that related to the class, if you want to like talk a little bit about the industry or whatever it is. I'm gonna keep kind of like more open today. As I predicted, the first week, like I mentioned to you guys, I did all the disclaimer, right? It starts very easy and then picks up pretty fast. And then it's starting with the second and third week, he gets a little hardcore. Like there's a lot of information, and I always end up like forgetting something, but eventually, I might remember. But it's just like I said. I mean, like it picks up and then it gets pretty intense, and then there's this whole stress about, it's like the reviews are coming and we want to have something for it and all that stuff. But I would say like don't worry too much. Uh, whatever you have done between now and, I don't know, like 25, 36 hours from now, just post in there, in the forum, and I'm gonna do my best like to comment on it. And I'm pretty sure like you're gonna find a lot of answers for a lot of your questions, like in those classes themselves, like by rewatching some stuff. But yeah, anything I can do to help, I can. Let's do this today. So let's start by, let me just save the scene here. This is my current model, which I'm probably gonna change the shape of the cranium, start like to not like it too much, like certain parts. And I actually captured this awesome picture here today. I thought the shape of the cranium was so interesting. I'm probably not gonna go that crazy with it, but it's very interesting. It's like maybe I can add some of those forms, just to make it a little bit slightly more weird. Because my guy right now has a very simple kind of cranium right there. Maybe if I add some of those elements there, is going to incorporate some more interesting things. You probably saw the renders today, so those are the ones I posted. This guy here as well. So it's coming along, but still, yeah, there's always like a lot of room for stuff. So I'm gonna keep poking around with it and see if I can get something closer to done this weekend. So let's save this one first. If I can try to ZBrush. And which one is that? It's 27. Still, I have to do some cleanup in my scenes because those scenes get so big. And then the way I normally work with them, and I try to save like every other 5 versions of the file. So if I have like version 1, I'm gonna save like version 1, version 5, and 10, things like that. And I delete a lot of stuff. Because I think the first versions I try to keep, just because I keep the saving the history, so I can generate like those little time lapses for people to see how we start the sculpting and things like that. But then after that, I just don't care. I just like, since we are recording a lot of this stuff, I just like delete the files. Otherwise, it becomes huge. So let's see. I gotta try to open. Let's see if I have just the teeth separate, or if it's part of the one of my models. Let's see. Get this guy here. Projects. I have a folder called teeth, I think. Yes. Let's see if this one has, yeah, I think this one has just the teeth, which in my case looks like this. Again, like it looks nice, but doesn't look perfect or anything. You know, it has a ton of room. So, but I can open this file here and show you guys what I have. So let's see. Let's start with, I have a scene for it, project, or is Z tool, one of the two. Let's see. Okay, so I don't have a project. I probably have, let me delete everything here. So delete all, save some memory here. And then let's load E4. Yeah, it's from May of last year. So it's been a while since I touched this one. But let's see what we have. Let's see if I have all the maps as well. If I don't, then I can just open the Stan Winston file and see. So that's basically the teeth I have. I have some of the little micro bubbles I was talking about yesterday in there. And again, I mean, like it's kind of like even the forms themselves, you know, it's like especially like the bottom ones, definitely have a lot of room for improvement. So let's see what we have here. So if I get just the top, let's take a look at this stuff. Let's see, turn off this guy and this one. So basically, like everything is a single geometry. That's the way I thought it would be interesting to build. So the way I started the model was basically like just using you know, quad extrusion. So I started with a very simple mesh. So let's pretend like you create like a one square right here, right? One polygon, 2 polygons, 3 polygons, 4 polygons, just one at a time. And then you subdivide by 4, right? So just like one subdivision level. And then you keep doing that. And I mean, like cutting when you need to cut. Sometimes I you know, if I have to extrude some stuff, I extrude as well. And then I managed like to pop those guys out just by extrusion. So in terms of the geometry itself, is very, very simple. It's just like a bunch of like extrusion of, you know, it's like a couple of polygons extruded. So I don't know how many sides in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's like 16 sides, I guess. And so basically like that's all extrusion. And then everything is combined. This one is not ideal right here. Ideally, I would have to have like this poly grouping here going inside of the gums a little bit more to create a little bit of an overlap. So ideally, would have this stuff going up slightly here and actually making an edge loop that actually is covered by the top stuff in there. Because I want to make sure that, you know, it's like things that are a little bit easier for me to paint the textures, right? If you have everything tucked in like that, for example, then it's going to be easier to just like select those elements right here, for example, and paint the color of the teeth, and then select the rest and paint the color of the gums, right? But the way I have to cheat it. I have to actually paint this part here, which is part of the gum geometry, a little bit white to get like the impression that's teeth in there, right? So in terms of the subsurface scattering, ideally you would have like two totally different shaders in here. Or if not two different shaders, at least like 2 different mapped subsurface scattering colors, right? Instead of like using everything, that peach color that's basically like very useful for the gums. The teeth themselves, they have a little bit of a different subsurface scattering color, which is kind of like, at least when I use it, it's more on the yellow side of things, more than the peach kind of side of things. So when it scatters, it goes more like yellow, right? So, I mean, in terms of geometry, that's basically what it is. Like you can even take a look at the topology. It's not like super heavy, like it's less than 5,000 polys. And it's capped. So basically like in the, made like a capping here. So basically like it's a complete little piece, right? So when the character opens the mouth, you're gonna have the overlap and everything. And then this, I'm gonna have to make sure that when I, you know, if I have to make the character open the mouth, that this stuff actually blends together in at the back of the throat. Or you can actually plan in a certain way that you can have everything attached, like just like we have when we do stuff for VFX, right? Everything is part of the model itself. And then let's see, like this is for the top teeth, and I believe the bottom, everything is the same geometry. So it's the topology is exactly the same. See, I believe it's all the same. It's just like change the, you know, the position of everything. So it's the same, you know, you look at the back in there, it's basically like the same thing, it's just a mirror of each other. And then I mirrored it and I start sculpting to have like the teeth to look more like the upper and the lower teeth. It's much easier because that way you can actually share the same UVs, you know. I believe like this character, for both of them, I have like both of them with the exact same maps. It's basically like I painted like different colors in here, but I think when I export, actually, this is not true. I think I have different maps for them, but I have to check. And then the other thing that I did was this transparency map here. So if you look at the model itself, it looks like this if I turn on my flat color. So you see like at the very tip of the teeth in here, I actually created this black area in there, right? Pre-black right here. You know, the very tips of them. And then from the inside, same thing, right? It's kind of like try to match a little bit the back of it with the front. So the transparency happens kind of like in the same spot. A little bit around the borders in there, kind of the same thing. And then going a little bit more of a gradient, black in like dark gray. And that's basically going to create a kind of like a softer transparency going up there. So that's basically like the only map I think I have plug other than the color map. I think that's the only one. And then for the tongue, what I did, I actually used quite a bit of inflate. So let's see, the tongue looks a little weird here. When you render, it looks good though, but it is not something that you would consider like realistic, you know. So for the painting of the tongue, I used some cavity selections. And then obviously some of them here are hand painted. You see like those little dots in there, kind of yellowish. It's kind of like a yellow, slightly greenish. So if I turn on my my skin material here, I try to pick those ones here and just paint just some of those little bubbles, you know. The way I did it, I basically like started this whole thing here. It looks very bubbly. I think you would benefit from something like, let's see if I can do this. If I used maybe, under deformation, maybe if I use a little bit of polishing here, maybe a little bit, let's try 10, see if it's too much. Yeah, that's too much. So 10 is too much. Let's try maybe polish by 1. Let's see if it does anything there. Yeah, that's better. And then if I go to this higher resolution, now I'm gonna get a little bit of a better, yeah, a little bit sharper in the middle there. This was super simple to do. I think like I did like in a few minutes because although it doesn't look great, it renders really good. And you get enough detail, you know. It's like as long as you have like enough depth for all this stuff. I don't have anything sculpted underneath. You have to be smooth underneath, right? No tongues is like that. This is completely smooth, and you have like this veins and everything underneath. But because I never needed it, was always like you know, laying there. I don't have any facial expression, so this always worked for me. But the way I built this was basically like just using the noise, the surface noise in ZBrush, and then once the surface noise was applied, then I came with the inflate, and you can do the inflate like in a single scoop using this inflate balloon in here. So if I go the opposite, look at what is going to happen here. See, oh man, I forgot that I have 15 million polygons in there. Oof! I hope it doesn't freeze. It just brought it down with the 15 million polygons model. Ay ay ay. Totally distracted. Sorry, guys. This is kind of like interactive. So if you slide this thing here, it kind of like it does a bunch of iterations in the background in there, and it's trying to deflate because I brought negative. It's trying to deflate this stuff. But look, finally, let's get this undo. Oh, thank God. So let's just go a couple of resolutions lower. Maybe around here, it's going to be better. So if you do like inflate balloon, that's basically what it does, right? It kind of like really inflates and creates those little bubbles like that. So this works really good. This is like the deflate, right? This works really good if you just use a tiny little bit of it right after the surface noise. It really inflates and creates this little micro bubbles. And then if you need a little bit more than that, then you can come with a large brush, like this inflate brush with a low intensity, like 2, for example. And you can just come like, kind of like this. Look, it kind of like inflates like that, right? And seals all those little gaps. But obviously you're gonna get like, some of them are gonna be messed up. So you have to be very careful when you inflate them so it's not too strong. I already got some of them messed up in there. But if you do just enough, see some of them are already crunched in there, just enough you can get some interesting kind of like cellular kind of patterning. So that's basically how I did it. And then all this stuff here obviously is just like hand carving that stuff, like just, you know, looking at some references and trying to capture some of that stuff. Yeah, so, and then another thing that I tried to do was that from time to time, instead of like just using like the regular, man, it's getting a little bit slow. Instead of using the regular inflate for everything, I would come with a tiny little brush, a tiny little inflate brush, and go over, sometimes like pick one of those and then inflate it pretty good. For example, those ones around this area, select something like that one and just like go for that little bubble and inflate it. So kind of like give some love to some of them. So you pick from time to time, just inflate 1 or 2, and then you can get those little kind of like hero little glands or whatever you call. And then you can paint a little color, you know, it's like sometimes you get this kind of discolored ones, a little bit more on the yellow whitish side. And then you can actually get that and, you know, do something like that. But I mean, like I never spent like too much time like thinking about like, let's reproduce like a perfect tone. So maybe that's something to think about, like, you know, in the future, just do a better job. But that's what I have for now. Then let's take a look at some of those renders to see how these things come together. Because we have like, oh, I forgot to talk about this micro bubbles in here. So another cool thing you can do, for example, like if you add, I don't know, you guys probably know this stuff, but if you add like, if you append to this set of subtools I have here, if I append Z-sphere, right, I can keep it like in the background if I want to. Take this one here, let's make it very tiny, for example. Rotate, let's see, scale. Make it small. Let's see, the teeth visible. You can put like anywhere you want. It's not going to be used actually, but you can put it right there, right? So now if I go to this guy right here and then click draw, you're going to see there's Z sketch in there, right? The Z sketch is pretty cool because you can draw on the surface. So you see, like I have my Z sphere in here selected, but I have a surface. It can be any surface that's visible in the screen. And if you start, you can actually draw on top of it. You just have to go and do this. So select the Z sphere itself, and then you can go to Z sketch right here underneath, and you can just click edit sketch. And now basically like it becomes a little color in there. So it's not like the red ball anymore. And now it becomes live, so I can draw on top of the surface, right? Can do like all kinds of stuff. Then with that in mind, you can start like actually tweaking how this works. So for example, like under brushing here, you have a bunch of things you can do. For example, let's see, depth, right? Like the depth you see is pretty embedded into the surface. So if what's gonna do is like if I draw it, oh, sorry. If I draw it here, oh, where is it? Edit sketch. See, like it's pretty embedded into the surface, but if I want those little bubbles to be a little bit more on the surface, you can just go to the brush depth, and you can actually bring it up like that. So it's kind of like a little bit more on the surface, like that. So now if I do an edit sketch, see the placement is a little bit more on the surface now. So the way this works now is that, let's see, like under my stroke, if I can do this, modifiers, lazy mouse. No, that's another place. Let's see, brush, modifiers, strength modifier. Yeah, I'm not remember like how to reduce the amount of samples in there, but I'm pretty sure is. So the way it works is basically like this. If I want to do like create some micro bubbles in here, I'm just gonna click edit Z sketch, just like gonna start adding some of those guys like that. In some areas, I can actually go and add more of them and incorporate some more stuff. You know, it's like you can go right against this stuff, add like some bigger ones. And then at any time, you can just press shift and smooth them. And they're going to start blending together, kind of like meta balls, right? Kind of like that. They blend it together. So I can actually go and make them look a little nicer. So like with this stuff, you can create like lots of tiny little bubbles. And the thing is, like, because they're so tiny and they are completely transparent, when you render, you're only going to see those little hints of light in there, like little reflections, but without actually seeing any geometry. So it looks really nice, you know. It's like if you render just with a couple of them for this kind of stuff, it's pretty cool. Yeah, you can put like some right in the middle in there. And then to generate them, because right now they're still those little meta balls, right? So you don't see what's going on. So under unified skin, if you press this, you see like the resolution is pretty bad, like it's only 128. So let's see if I increase this to 1024. Whoops, I think it's the opposite actually. Yeah, it's gonna be the opposite. Let's try with I think it's adaptive skin. Is it adaptive? No, I think it's unified. I think I just have to need. I just need more stuff. Subdivision. Let's see. Count 1, 2. I don't remember the settings for this thing. Huh. I don't remember like what's the setting that I was using before. Those ones are not working. Polished surface. Let's see. Subdivision level 4. Yeah, that's weird because I remember like getting some close enough to the result I was looking for. 16. Why is that not doing it? If you guys have experience with the Z-Sketch, you're probably gonna remember. But sphere density. Let's see what this is.
I think it should be the adaptive one.
It should be adaptive, right? Yeah, the adaptive is actually not turning on here for some reason. I think, oh, let's see, with the A. Huh, yeah. So if I press A outside, I think that's it. Let's see. Okay, so that's doing it.
You can also turn the Dynamesh resolution down to 0, and then it'll use the density slider as subdivision levels.
Oh.
Instead of Dynamesh.
What do you mean, like the?
In the adaptive skin. Or maybe in unified skin too, but if you turn that to 0, it'll use it'll act like the old school adaptive skin before they added the Dynamesh resolution.
Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it's funny because it's a combination of the adaptive and the, yeah, this one is more likely. Yeah, it's weird because I remember getting a better result before. It was like closer to what I was seeing. That's but it's a matter of like really looking for those settings there, see what works, because this one here was generated that way and it has a much closer mesh to it. See, like from this to this. Oh, now it doesn't work anymore. Now it's actually assuming the, yeah, I just screwed up like the adaptive in there. I don't know exactly what settings I had before, but yeah, it's like you're gonna have to try to play with those values in there and see what works for you. In this case here is actually not doing exactly what I was expecting. Preview. Could swear that it was doing fine before. I saw like every time ZBrush changed something. Yeah, this one is more likely. Let's see. Yeah, so something like that. Let's see. Yeah, probably something like that I used. 1024. Yeah, this is actually working now. So I'm using the subdivision level 0 in here now. Let's see if I put like 1, if it changes anything. Yeah, it's actually doing better now. So so that's the settings I'm using right now. Unified, I have preview 1, 1024, smooth at 10, and then adaptive, space at 0, like you said. And then once you have this one, you're gonna have to kind of like click in Polymesh 3D and then get this stuff exported. But you can always go in, is it gonna crash? It just crashed, dude. I was trying to smooth them. Oh yeah. That's the second crash that ZBrush gives us during class this time around. So like this is the most we ever had. And I have to talk to those guys over there. Okay, so let's, since we already crashed, let's go to ZBrush for now. You kind of got the spirit of it anyway. Let's get to this guy, and then this scene is saved already. I can show you the, let's see. Those are the raw renders before the post-processing. It looks much nicer with the post-processing because of the bloom effect that I got like in the back and everything. But that's basically like the hair that I have. Yesterday, all those little things that I pulled out, they're looking like that, but still overall, it looks too even. So when you look from different angles, it's still pretty even, right? This one has depth of field in there. So I'm gonna end up like pulling some more of those fuzzies in there. And but it looks kind of nice. Like the quality of the hair is kind of nice with the settings we used yesterday. But definitely the stubble needs to go a little bit. It's a little bit too thick right now. But anyway, let's close this one up, and let's open a file with let's see with Jessica, because she has a nice set of teeth. The funniest comment I read online is when I posted a work in progress of my wife Jessica. The portrait, someone mentioned like, oh man, those are some very white teeth, like commenting that it was like it looked fake. And then she was here with me in the office, and she was reading the comment, and she said like, dude, I have very big white teeth, that's what I have. She was like, oh man. The guy said like, oh, this is some big white teeth. And she was like, but I do have big white teeth, what's wrong with that? So let's see. Open that. It's funny because she was smiling at me and it was actually pretty bright. Yeah. Let's open the scene here, which is kind of cool. I can show you actually the XGen for this scene here, and you're gonna see that it was back in what, like July last year. So it's been like some time ago. And like I said, like I get stuff done. Sometimes I don't know exactly how the best technique to do at the time, and then I learn later. But I got stuff done. But a lot of it was done manually with the sculpt, manually sculpting stuff. You know, so you're gonna see that in terms of splines, there's not, for example, like this is the hair the way I have it in there, right? Looks like there's a lot of you know, nice little ins and outs and zigzags and all that stuff. But a lot of this is not done with a lot of curves. A lot of this stuff is hand sculpted. So the beauty of XGen is that you can do a lot of this stuff like by hand sculpting things, right? One thing that I didn't mention, for example, during this class was oh, there's a problem right there. Look at that, hair is a little broken right there. But this kind of stuff, you know, it's like blending the hair with the surrounding areas by growing and making some of the peach fuzz a little longer. Same for this hair around here in this area, same thing. So I had all my peach fuzz going all the way across the entire head, right? But when I got around the hair part here, I gently with a brush just like turned them a little bit longer. And I made like this whole thing blend a little bit together, you know? So I needed to create like this nice little split in the hair. So I did with the two different, a couple of different like techniques to do that. But if I start exploring this just for you to have an idea, so check this out. If I go to like interactive, let's see, nostril hair we don't need. So I have a layer just for flyaways. So let's take a look at that stuff, like separate, for example. So you see this layer here, it's just a bunch of little hairs, right? So instead of like fighting to do everything like with my Native American guy, if you watch the videos, I did everything in a single pass. I just had like a noise with a very, very tight, like little specks. And then I was able to create the same effect using just a single layer. But in this case here, I just create like a description just for the flyaways. And that way I can have a lot of control as well. You know, I can just like go and hand sculpt a lot of this stuff, add some noise in there and get it done. So when you mix this one with the hair itself, then you get those nice breakups, for example, like all the way around there, right? It's like they have this kind of like more natural feel to it. But it's basically like just flyaways, like as a separate you know, layer. So let's turn that off. Sorry, I'm kind of like going sideways here, but I think it's since you guys are going to be doing hair soon, I think this is very useful that we open the scene so we can explore the hair first and then move to the teeth. So for the main hair, let's explore this thing. Check this out. If I turn everything off, let's turn off noise, 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 sculpt, 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 guides, and sculpt. Scale, not necessary. But basically, like that's her hair right there. Like that's how it started, right? Select those faces that we started with before. So that's part of it. So sculpt, there's this sculpt layer, that's the main layer that I kind of like did some work in there for some reason. I don't even know if I needed this layer here. With probably what I did was like I start sculpting the guides themselves. So the guides are doing this work right here. See, like it's doing like a good part of the work, right? But there's a lot that's not working. So there's some stuff that's crossing across her face in here. Some of this stuff here is definitely not working. Let's see how the splines look like. So I have some like that, right? Some start from the front and they go to the sides. But I don't have a lot of them. If I had more, probably I would get like a better result. And later I learned that, you know, it's always good to create like bundles of them. For example, like you have like 3 of those splines separate, creating like a little bundle, and then you get closer into a point. When you get like around the tips, you make into a point, and then you can get a bunch of those and you can generate something really close to my final image, much better than what I have here. So as you can tell here, out of not being very experienced with longer hair, what I did, I just blocked everything. And then I was like, okay, I have to get this done. And I just don't want to spend all the time. So I'm going to sculpt it like manually. So basically, like if I turn it off, so that's how it looks just with the curves, right? There's a lot of stuff that's going to go across her head because I don't have like enough of those splines to interpolate. So they're basically like going through the scalp and to underneath. So they're going to go all the way inside of the head. So you see like those guys here penetrating. If you look from the inside, the hair is it's a mess. It's kind of like hard to see in here, but yeah, it goes all the way inside of her head there. So I start sculpting stuff. So I added a sculpt layer in here, and the sculpt layer here is to get like the shape itself a little bit closer to what I wanted. And this is by selecting by bundles. So if I have something like if I click edit in here, just doing what we were doing the other day, just selecting like bundles like this, right? And then just like going and deselecting whatever I don't want. So something like that, deselect this one, right? So if I want to create like a bundle just for this ones here, I can just go to my comb brush, and then under the tool settings here, you can simply say invert frozen effect. And now if I sculpt anything here, it should affect just this bundle, nothing else. So this way I was able to actually, if you look at the next steps in here, let me just deselect this. If you look at the next steps in here, that's exactly what I started doing. So starting around here, see like with one sculpt layer, there are no guides in this at this point. It goes from this to this. And this is just like by freezing little bundles, deselecting everything else, making sure I have just like similar bundles coming from a similar area. You can always like select, for example, a bundle from here and then go close to scalp and check if this is coming from a lot of different places. And you can just isolate and just get, okay, I want just those ones growing from this spot right here. So if I show you there, so basically like you see the roots in here, they're gonna change quite a bit. It's just me selecting stuff by bundle. So I did a lot of this work, like all this stuff by hand, right? So see the back is still pretty straight in there. There's not a lot going on. So this stuff is still very straight. So let's see another sculpt brush or layer. So I got stuff more complex now, right? Starting to look a little bit more interesting. And then now with the noise, start adding things to become a little bit more natural. So this noise here, I try to do like a very tight noise. So if you compare this one with noise and no noise, it's kind of like has a lot of kind of like breakups into it. And then there's another layer of noise right here. This one's probably a little bigger. Yeah, so this one here is introducing some of those flyaways. So see like a bunch are gonna pop right here. because I'm probably using a map for it. Let's take a look here. So you see, like for mask, the noise modifier, I have this map that's very, very tight. I'm probably using like a effects invert. Oh, no, it's not inverted, actually. It's actually a good example here. I can copy this later to myself to make sure I have those settings. You guys can copy on your side as well. And, you know, copy all those settings in here, because this is kind of like the stuff I was trying to do the other day, and I could not find the right amount. It seems like this one is working very nicely just for creating those extra flyaways, you know. If you select one or the other, it's definitely like adding some changes in there, but without being too dramatic, you know. It's just like affecting a couple of those hairs, which is really cool. So between this and this, yeah, you're definitely gonna get, the main shape's gonna remain the same, but you're adding all those flyaways around there. And then there's a third noise in here, which is adding even more of it. So you see like how much is breaking up. So just creating those extra ones. You can take a look at the settings in here. Let's see for this last one. Uh-oh. What's happening over there? Oh, I'm gonna mute you, man. You're mute in there. There's a lot of noise. Yeah, so here in the frequency, that's basically the settings I'm using for this last one that adds some interesting flyaways as well. So that's another thing you guys can try to copy if you don't want to spend too much time, you know, poking around. And this is a different one from the first one. So probably that first one is a little tighter, so that means it's gonna affect less hairs. This one is gonna affect more of them. And that's basically the settings for the noise I'm using there. So very interesting, huh? That just like all the curiosity that, you know, sometimes you get in trouble that you think like, oh my God, my curves are not behaving the way I wanted. And then there's no way. I'm trying to add the curves in bundles and still I don't get the design that I want. Just keep in mind that it's possible to sculpt everything manually if you want, right? Just by freezing things and sculpting just basically bundle by bundle, you know. You can create like very complex designs like that. Obviously, it's not ideal if you are animating or something like that, right? Because you have to rely on the dynamics of the curves and all that good stuff. But if you're sculpting for a still image, oh my God, you can do anything with XGen, you know, as long as it doesn't crash, you should be covered. So let's take a look at the teeth now. So the teeth is basically the same teeth geometry that I show you guys. Let's let's hide everything here that we don't need. Let's try like main hair. Let's hide her face. So basically the same geometry with the same back right there, with the same tongue, just like it changed to conform to her face. The interesting thing about the teeth, and that's gonna be the kind of stuff that either you guys have to use like an image in the background as a blueprint to actually try to nail those things, or be really careful. Take like some very close-up pictures like I did. I asked her to open her mouth and took like lots of pictures of it just to see, for example, one thing that's very deceiving is that sometimes people build the teeth completely straight underneath, or sometimes it's too rounded. And it's more complex than you think, you know. It's like when you look at teeth, let's just subdivide this one. You're gonna find out that, you know, it's like sometimes you get like a tiny little squarish spot like that. It starts like kind of sharp like that, and then eases into a little bit more of like a rounded surface. Same thing here, it comes a little bit more round and squares a little bit in there and then becomes round again. Then those ones are a little bit rounder in here. This one gets more square. So there's a lot of rhythm when it comes like to the corners and you know, the corners of the teeth. And this is very hard to get right. I still have to work some more in here, but it's very hard to get right, like how much it goes from square to rounded. And it's the kind of stuff like sometimes makes or breaks the likeness too, you know, that to get the teeth correctly, especially like obviously the size and rotation, things like that. But you know, it's like in this case here, because her bottom teeth was not visible in that portrait, I decided to actually not even change it. So I kind of like, maybe I changed a little bit the front ones in here, but those are pretty much like the same ones I had before, you know. So the occlusion here is pretty bad as well, right? Like she doesn't have a good occlusion here. I probably would have to bring those ones forward to make it a better occlusion. But again, it's not showing in the render, so who cares about that? And then in terms of the the thickness in here. Let's see. Thickness of the teeth itself, if you look from the bottom. You see how I did here? I mean, like when I sculpted her teeth, I decided to dig in a little bit deeper in here to make a thin wall around here. So basically like the distance between the front and the back is much shallower in those areas. You can actually exaggerate even more. For example, right here, right? And create those little dimples in there. This one I could do the same because you want to make sure you make this wall between this inner part and the outer part kind of thin. So when you have like transparency maps assigned or subsurface scattering, it's going to look different in those areas because it's going to be so thin, right? And that's when the random walk 2 comes handy because it basically like it works much better for super thin surfaces. So let's take a look at the shaders in here. Let's do a quick renders first and see how this turns out. Let's see. Let's try like this with everything. Her eyes are floating there. Let's see if I can do a semi-quick render. Gesso, maybe like with less samples, so it's faster for us to see what's happening. And let's take a look. This guy. Oh, this is like the color space for her scene is different. So you see like he's using the wrong color space. This is basically the ACES, RRT, yeah, I think that's it. But then the basically like the, yeah, I don't think it's like, those are the ones that look more correct, I believe. No, it's still not the color space I wanted here. Something weird. I don't know, it's because, yeah, it's because my scene is not set for ACES. It's still distorted in here. It's not the RRT that I use, it's normally the CG one. So it should be more red than this. So it's definitely not, it's not, the scene is not set for it, but it doesn't matter. Let's render her with sRGB, which she's set for. And let's see what happens. Let's get this. Then once we have the kind of like a render to iterate on it, then we can actually tweak stuff and see what the, you know, when I change the shaders, what it does to the model itself. Yeah, I'm glad you asked about the teeth because I know some of you guys are modeling people smiling, right? And gonna have to deal with this later. So this might be really useful for some people. Because I went through this phase of modeling just happy people, right? All my models are smiling all of a sudden. And then, but that phase is gone. Thank God. I was so happy, you know. Now I'm back to grumpy old man. So all my models gonna be serious from now on. Enough with that happiness. Makes me sick. All right, so is it rendering? Yeah, it's probably like just loading all those maps. Let's see, it says rendering. I don't even remember what's this HDRI I'm using. It's kind of like an artist studio. Let's see. Yeah, Artist Workshop is also from HDRI Haven. But I mean, like, there's so many things about this this old projects that I was not like super careful about, like calibrating things, and you know, it's kind of like visually trying to assemble the best image I could, but without being too technical about stuff. And then I think for this project here, I kind of like tried to step up a little bit more, be more careful about neutralizing the colors, the lighting, the, you know, using ACES as well. And I think it's going to pay off because my plan is to revisit those old scenes and try to bring all those characters to a higher level, you know. Weird, it doesn't seem like it's rendering, but it says it is, so I guess just have to wait a little bit. Let's see, while it renders, if it is rendering, let's select one of those and do a little exploration here. So teeth upper. So let's take a look at the shaders in here meanwhile. Subsurface is at the 1. So I'm gonna ignore the base. So nothing's gonna be used in there. For the index of refraction, I mean, again, take this with a grain of salt. You guys experiment with it and you're probably gonna be able to do a better job than I'm doing here. 0.05 for the specular itself. This is the first specular. I'm also using a coat, but we're gonna go through that later. So 0.05. So it's pretty tight, but it's not like mirror, right? Mirror would be like 0.01, something like that would be very sharp. So it has a little bit of a roughness in there. Index of refraction, I'm using basically the same as the cornea, but might be, it could be different. For the color itself, it's just pure white for the spec. And then for the map, I'm using Teeth Upper Rough 2. What is this? I don't even remember. There's a roughness map in here. Let's see how it looks like. Oh, it kind of looks like the same map, actually. The same map that I'm using for the, but I'm not sure because I didn't see a map in my ZBrush file before. So it might be something different. Let's see, this guy load. Yeah, I think I don't know if I painted an extra map for her, maybe. Maybe a better idea would be open her own project and see how the teeth looks like. Let's do that. Let's pretend that we've never seen this file before. Let's open her own project. So Jessica, let's try ZBrush. This guy right there. This is the very latest. Last time I modified was in August last year. So it's opening. And then meanwhile, let's see if we are rendering here or not. Apparently we're not, but I can hear my processor is spinning in there, so something is definitely happening. Let's try to just like do a full-on update full scene here. Let's see if that helps. Now I'm pushing the computer here, man. It's like opening a file, saving another one. Because we don't have enough crashes in this class. We need more of them. Okay, now my machine is very slow. Okay, starting to respond again. Okay, that one should be loaded. I'm getting an error in here. There's a DLL because I was experimenting with this shader that was written by, what's his name, man? I forgot his name. It's kind of rude to forget people's names, but I'm terrible with, people close to me. So I'm terrible with names, guys, sorry. Yeah, he wrote this shader that's kind of like a shader you assign to the camera lens. And then it renders as if it was like a Leica, camera, for example. It has the distortion and everything. Or in this case, the one I used for Dick Smith was actually a Zeiss lens. So it simulates like the Zeiss with the chromatic aberration and distortion. It's a little bit kind of like spherical, slightly. So that was kind of interesting. Man, I cannot see any renders. Why is it not rendering? It says it's rendering right there, but then it just gets stuck. I'm not sure what's happening here. I think the best way would be maybe like just, let's do something here. Sometimes we need something a little bit more drastic to render things. It's, it's so slow, man. Her file is already loading there, so I don't know why mine is so slow now. Yeah, it's thinking still. Let's wait a little bit and see what happens. So for Jessica, I mean, like you see how everything is more delicate, right? Like in terms of the detail. If I do like a, let's go to a full preview here of the HD geometry. All the detail is much more soft, right? Like things are much more soft than what I have for my current model, for example. And because there was a smile, I actually decided to smooth quite a bit, like the lips and everything. But it's a model that still has so much room for improvement, which I definitely want to revisit at some point and make a nicer version of her. Yeah, it's cute, but it's not quite there. So let's see. Let's see in terms of, oh, this one here already has a region map after I learned that whole thing about, it's like splitting the maps, right? So it's like pure colors. So just like pure white and pure green in there. So that's actually being used to split more perfectly the center. But then I obviously I'm using all those like hand sculpting things. So let's see if we have anything like for the teeth in here. So the teeth, I have a roughness map that's the one I'm probably using in there. It's here, which is good. Okay, so for the roughness map, I have everything very, very white when it comes to the teeth. A little bit whitish when it comes around here, very close to the gums. And then everything is black from that point on. I would say that I'm probably tweaking those values in Maya because I would expect to have more speck around here, kind of like a little bit more level with everything. It looks like everything's very different. So I believe the intention here is to make this whole area more wet all the way to this area, and then a little bit, you know, less, have more roughness around there. So I believe that's how I'm doing it. So let's see if I have anything else. So this is the transmission of the teeth. In her case, I'm actually using less intensity for it. So if I switch to my flat color, see, like it goes from that super dark that I had at the very edges. Now it's a little bit more, instead of like going to the edges, this one, I think I was looking at her pictures and I was trying to mimic where the transparent areas were when I saw in the pictures. So I ended up doing something like this. So it doesn't go full black, it stays around here. But just remember, even if you go full black so you can actually see everything where you're putting the detail, in Maya you can correct that and bring those blacks back to gray, right? But in this case here, I think I did the opposite. I did everything kind of, you know, I'm always experimenting like different ways of doing things, and then sometimes I feel it works better. So this one is a little bit more subtle, and then if I needed more darkness in there, then I would basically like shift the colors in Maya. So basically, like, but for the roughness map that we are looking at, that's basically what I have. So let's see how it looks in there. It's definitely not rendering the scene, so I'm gonna do something here so we can render it. Let's get back to, okay, so let's just select everything we have here. And we have a light, and let's see, camera as well. What's this camera perspective? No, let's see. This light here, which is right there. Okay, sky dome. So that's one is inactive. Okay, let's get all those things here. Let's get those ones and those ones as well. And maybe the perspective too. So we have the camera. Let's export this stuff to, sometimes it's necessary to clean your scenes. You know, it's like if you need to clean anything, you can select everything you see in your outliner. And you can just export to a clean Maya. Just make sure you get the cameras and everything, so you get everything with the keyframes. Export as a Maya binary. And then, yeah, let's try that. So I have my, I'm gonna put like under, just put the Jessica under the native, the African guy here. So Jessica Keith, that's it, one. And let's open one of those scenes with one of those guys. So we can get like maybe, oops, that's the wrong scene. Right here, and then scenes. Let's get one of those guys. It's gonna take a little bit to open because of those files are heavy now. But at least you're gonna get the ACES color space already configured. All I have to do is actually go to each one of those maps and then just set them up for ACES, and then we should get something okay-ish. So let's do this now. Because I want to make sure we are able to do even if a little crappy render. So I can show you like by pulling those sliders down and up to show you exactly what's happening with them. Let's see. Still loading. Okay, so we got our guy in there. And then let's just like do a general cleanup here. Let's delete all the hair stuff, because this is what makes the scene completely heavy, right? Get all this stuff down, and then I'm gonna hide all this stuff. And let's bring that file. So import. I'm gonna go import best guess, import Jessica teeth. Let's see around here, when you import it, under namespaces, you can use this option here that says use selected namespaces. And then, let's see. You select namespace as a parent and add a new namespace. Which one is that? I think that's the one I was normally using. Let's try that. Yeah, it still came with the, if you import something and you got like you selected the wrong namespace, there is an editor for that if you don't know. So for example, if I click those guys here, if you go to Windows General Editors, you have like a namespace editor, and then you can delete all this stuff. So for example, like Jessica teeth, you see I have a prefix in there, right? So if I do this, I just do delete. It says let's merge with what? With the root or parent. I can just do root. And it basically eliminates everything, and now all the names are back to normal. But there is a way to actually set up the namespace to nothing and then import it. I just picked the wrong thing in there. But let's go back in here and let's take a look at this stuff. We don't need the eye, so let's save us some time with that. And then for the teeth, let's take a look at the maps we have assigned again. So the specular map, I'm just gonna make sure this, instead of RGB, since we switched to ACES, is gonna be utility RGB texture. And then the bottom one should be a similar kind of thing. So let's see subsurface. So for the color itself, let's do the same. So utility texture. And I think, let's see if we have a lot more stuff here or not. Yeah, this one has some stuff as well. Let's see. Utility RGB texture. And then do I have anything plugged at transmission? Definitely. Yeah, so this one, gonna need it. Texture. Anything else? Extra roughness. There's a roughness in here. Okay, texture. And what else we have? We have coat. Texture. What else? Let's see, geometry maybe. We have a cell noise that doesn't need any transformation. And I think that's basically it. Like for the base, we're not using anything. And let's try to do a quick render here. Let's see if it works this time around. Since we already have the scene all, it's teeth, just make sure it doesn't overwrite anything. And we're gonna put like 6. Let's try, and I hope it renders. Oh gosh, everything is so slow. Oh man, Jesus Christ. That was a back-to-back thing, huh? It was like ZBrush and then Maya now. Holy smokes. What a waste of time. Holy smokes, like it's back-to-back. Like this machine used to be like the most stable machine I ever had. But it's starting to get a little crappy. I think I'm gonna have to remove a bunch of, you know, unused software in there. It was pretty smooth before.
Whenever I have issues with the render time at loading, I don't know if you have the auto load TX in there, but if those textures have changed, it might be trying to overwrite the TX if it's creating it.
That's true, yeah. I think like what I have in my scene, let's take a look when I first opened the shot.
And the other thing is, if you do try to render again, if you look at the output window, it'll tell you which texture is loading, and if it's when it's rendering, it'll tell you which one's crashing it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sometimes I go and I pay more attention to that. Sometimes I go to the script editor and I look at that as well, but this is the kind of stuff, you know, it's like I'm trying to load the files and not even allow me to do anything. It's crashing straight away. It's crazy. But this is basically my graphics card. It's not even anything too fancy, like a GTX 1070. So it's kind of like a 3 generations ago. I don't know. I think the prices are pretty good now if you buy them used. So let's see. Yeah, this machine I bought like for $1,000 from eBay 2 years ago. And that was like way before I started thinking about doing those classes, actually. I bought it and I paid like in a couple of payments, actually, like 6 payments to be able to pay $1,000. That's how broken, you know, pretty broke. So that was before the classes. The classes really helped. So let's take a look at this. Let's, again, eliminate a bunch of things. Let's get this done again. And I'm going to save straight away, man, because I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm going to just delete all this stuff. Let's get to delete everything. And just going to import that other scene straight away. And I'm going to try to save straight away as well before it crashes. Because I don't want to do like be walking like backwards since it's our last day. I don't want to, man, this whole thing to be a pain in the butt for you guys. Because I don't care. I mean, like for me here, I mean, the crashes, I kind of like I said, like I deal with the crashes. But if I'm actually trying to show something to someone who's actually paying for it, you know, it's like I don't want to, you know, have this experience for you guys. So so let's try this again. I'm gonna just save this file straight away. So save as, and then I'm gonna just save as Jessica Teeth 2. And I'm gonna do what you said before. Let's just take a look here in my render settings. Under my Arnold render textures. Yeah, it's saying like use existing TX. So maybe that's the problem right there.
One other thing I would say, just I mean, I do this. This is the side of stuff. I'm sure you know all this stuff, but diagnostics. If you just want to see if it's a displacement issue, if you go to diagnostics. Yeah. You can turn off all textures just to see if it renders the grayscale.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah, in this case here, I think it's just a matter of like getting those maps converted. Which, by the way, if I go to utilities, there is a TX manager in here. If you're using TX files, and this TX manager sometimes is easier to, you know, it's like to manipulate all those things and actually, you know, refresh things, use textures in folder, all that stuff. But in this case here, I don't think we have that many. And another thing I'm gonna do, if I go to my Hypershade, see I have a bunch of shaders in there. Let's just go to do a cleanup in here. Since I deleted all those files, all those meshes, let's just go to edit, delete the news nodes. That should clean up a lot. And then now we have all those textures in here. Let's see which ones are actually textures and which ones are procedurals. To make sure that everything is deleted. And also, you can do like a delete duplicate shader networks. So let's do that one as well. So let's see which ones. Apparently I have a ton in here, but it's kind of surprising that I see like so many in there. I bet a lot of those are actually, let's see. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I have like the displacement stuff, but this is all for the eyes as well. I think that's the problem right there. That's why we have so many textures. Let's do it again. Edit, delete unused. Okay, you removed a few in them, but not a lot. And then let's see which ones are those guys. Yeah, I'd rather go to, you know, it's like just look at the teeth itself like I was doing before and just like do manually here. Specular, let's try to do this fast if I can. So texture, go back. So that's specular base we don't need. Transmission, let's reload this one. Let's go poop. Through. And then this guy, roughness. Then once this is done, I can just save it again, and then we can explore it. Texture, subsurface, first map. Second map. And the tongue's probably gonna be messed up, but we're not gonna pay attention to that for now. Let's just focus on the teeth. Then the coat has another map, and that should be it. Oh, there's another map, which is the displacement that I have to take a look. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it correctly. Let's go back here. See the displacement just for the teeth. So this one, instead of raw, I'm going to have to convert to, probably there's a script for that, I suppose, to actually convert everything in a single scoop. So utility raw. And, or I can set up the scene from the get-go in there and see if it, when it opens, it actually does a better job. So let's hide the tongue, save this file, and hope for the best. So it seems like just the HDRI is actually rendering, being used for the lighting for the whole thing. Let's see. Let's get it back in here. And my space, color space is ACES, so we are good. And I hear my processor is starting there, so. Another thing that's different here from the last time is that I'm using like a background, a white background. This one is something you can do in Arnold if you need to. You can switch this to any color you want for the background. And you know, it's like you can use the color management and things change a little bit in there. Because in my case, my guy had like those very bright lights, like white lights. And at the same time, I had, you know, it's like the background was completely black, right? So I wanted to be able to see the background as a white background. So that's why I did this one. And then when you export the files, you can actually get the white background in there. I hope it's rendering. It feels like it's at least like slow now. Before it was allowing me to do stuff until it got to that spot that got very slow, but here it's slow already, so it's definitely loading those maps. And maybe converting them to TX, I'm not sure. It's not loading the TX, but maybe like individually, each one of those map nodes, maybe they have that option to convert to TX in there, which I didn't check. Let's take a look in here. Oh, doesn't seem like it's doing much. Yeah, it's definitely spinning now. I can hear my processor in here. Arnold shut down, what's that? I don't know why it's refusing to render. It's kind of bizarre. Yeah, the processor is kind of like, I can hear like picking up and then it goes down again. Very, very, very bizarre. The scene is pretty clean now. There's not a lot going on. Oh, the HDRI in the back, I forgot to convert, but that wouldn't matter. I mean, like at least we should be able to see something being rendered. Definitely moved a little bit. Let's just wait a few more seconds and see if that helps. Good Lord, I mean, like this is not supposed to be that heavy at this point. Well, what I can do for now, let's just get, let me just do, so I can actually save you some time. Because again, like I want to, oh, there you go. Something is rendering. With a lot of depth of field. But at least like the maps are loaded, which is good. If I can only cancel this, there you go, canceled. So let's try. Go around here. View, select camera. Well, things are all loaded now, so at least that is good. Depth of field. Please render something. Don't tell me you didn't load all the textures. If you renders, then all I have to do is just switch the HDRI to ACES space, and then we should get something in there. It's extremely slow.
I think the only other thing that it would be, honestly, is the amount of displacement levels that you have on the geometry. Because the textures of TX, they should load fast.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, let's take a look at how many subdivision levels I have on the Arnold. Yeah, it's like painfully slow. There's a kind of scene, you know, it's like that should be flying here. I mean, like I don't, you know, it's like the whole class was around that, you know, before, but and I was poking around those files all the time with the entire thing with hair and everything, and was rendering just fine. But I swear, man, there's always something. It doesn't matter how many times you open things and you test. When it's time for this kind of stuff, you know. I was actually happy today because I was watching a video with Joseph Drust from Pixelogic, and he is such a guru, right? Like the guy knows everything about ZBrush, man. And then he was struggling. He was trying to do something there, and it wasn't quite working. And I was like, man, if Joseph Drust like have this kind of problem, you know, it's like after like hours and hours and hours of experimenting with this stuff, I'm pretty fine if I'm having trouble with something live, you know. But yeah, you cannot predict ever. Let's see, subdivision. Yeah, I have a ton, man. I have like 5 in there. That explains a lot. Let's try with 3, and let's try to cancel this one as soon as possible. Even with 5 in here, I mean, like I did those renders before. It was just fine, you know. Something is a little funky when it comes like to the overall thing. It's a little funky. It shouldn't be loading like the TX anymore. It should be all in memory at this point. And it's just like not even giving me any message in there anymore. And this is like, this is being a little painful. So my intention at this point was to actually just explore the shader network without trying to render it, and just showing you the basically like a render on the side, and then the settings, and then you basically experiment on your side, I guess. But you see, like I just started to thinking here. Okay, let's cancel that. Okay, let's try it again. Just click that one. This one is at 3 now. This one has to be 3 as well. So, well, I don't know why the top one was 5, because the bottom one is 3. And see, even to move stuff around, it's like it's stuttering. Everything is a little stuttery. Let's get this guy and convert this map to raw. ACES utility raw. Let's save this one again. Another thing, I'm just gonna double check here. Arnold, yeah, it doesn't have the auto generate textures in there. Let's see this one here, for example, just specular. Yeah, it's off as well. So all this stuff should be off, because like I said, I was rendering this stuff so many times. This one has an auto generate. But that's not, yeah, that's not. Interesting. Okay, let's try it again. One more time. And then for the results, let me show you this. My renders are a little crappy here because I was never totally happy with it. But yeah, it looks like this. A little too white, I agree. Could add a little bit more yellow in there, but it's such a fine line too. Let's see if I have a little bit more of a close-up. Like this one. It's a little simple, right? I can actually definitely add some more complexity in there. But I like, for example, the shape of the teeth, like how it squares in these little corners. It's square enough, but you still have a little gap in there. So I like that way. The displacement have a little bit of indentations right here to create those little divots in there. And the transparency is very, very subtle at this point. Maybe I could go a little bit higher with that. But yeah, like you see, like the skin is very, very subtle, right? Like the pores are very shallow. And then there's a lot of those little guys kind of like that. Still look a little simplistic here. I can definitely go and tweak this entire thing. But yeah, so let's see. Apparently it's rendering. Oh, finally. But the bottom one is screwed. So we don't need the bottom one. Let's get this rid of that. And get this one just like that. Okay, cool. Finally, you're having some renders here.
Hey, Chris?
Yes.
I know it's kind of nearing the end, but do you think we might get to take a look at some of the clay scenes before we go?
Oh yeah, let's take a look. I'm gonna just like go through this the base like the shader network, so you guys are aware of it. What's actually working for me. But again, like keeping in mind that color correction was kind of like not like my biggest concern at that point. So this basically like let's explore this shader here. It's so basically we got like the base is not being used. You already saw the specular stuff. Color is not completely white in this case, like 0.822, sorry, for the white, 822. And then for the weight for the specular, you have a specular map that's the teeth upper rough. That last one I show you guys, it's basically like the teeth has more specular than the rest. For the color balance, I'm actually, as I suspected, I'm tweaking it. So instead of like being pure black for the gums and pure white for the rest, I'm actually bringing the blacks up, like the 180 is offsetting the blacks, and then bringing the white all the way down. So just like I mentioned before, this one here is being kind of like balanced, right? So everything is a little bit closer together than this, or a lot more close together than this. And so specular is, that's it. For the transmission, that map that we plugged in there. But again, like based like visually when I was rendering it, I think like the alpha gain was a little too strong. So for example, like if I have this transparency map right here, right? And it was looking a little too strong in the render. So I probably brought it down because of that. So, you know, it's like, that's why I kind of brought the whole thing down here to kind of probably like make most of it transparent or something like that. But it's hard to tell without the, so let's see under effects, I'm actually inverting the effect. So that makes sense. So if I'm inverting the effect and now what's black became white in there. So actually I'm bringing down the blacks in here. Instead of like bringing down the whites, I'm bringing down the blacks. So making it less transparent overall. That's the whole point of this setting in there. So that's the specular. Then the transmission of that, full depth, color 0822. I mean like another one that it could be completely transparent, but I'm probably bringing a little bit down and making things a little bit less transparent overall. For the, oh, there's an extra roughness here in the transmission itself, which is an interesting one. If you add roughness to the transmission, which is the transparency, you start adding this kind of like milky kind of quality to the thing, you know? So instead of like having a pure refraction in the transmission, the refraction start getting blurry. So you get like blurry reflections. You can create some interesting effects with that. So I think that's the reason I'm using that rough map inside of this. And then let's see, in terms of the subsurface scattering, random walk 2, the scale is a little bit higher than what I'm using for the skin of my African guys, like it's 150. So this one is a little bit higher, 160. And with there is no back or forth scatter, is basically like all the same default. And then this one here, I'm using the upper teeth, like the map itself, but I'm actually, the exposure I'm bringing down. So like by 0.4 down basically. So instead of like having something that's like more like pinkish like that. So if I bring the exposure down, everything's gonna get darker overall. So everything's a little bit darker than what you're seeing here. And I think that's being compensated with the radius. So let's see the radius. I have the upper teeth. So basically what I'm doing here to make sure that there's a separation between the type of scatter that's happening between the gums and the teeth. The lazy way I did here was basically create, plug like the same color map into the radius. So that way I'm forcing the scatter that happens in the teeth to be white yellowish, and the scatter that is happening with the gums to be a little bit more on the speech kind of color overall. So it's basically like the same map plugged in both. Sometimes this doesn't work very well. For the skin, for the most part, I like using like a plain color, or at least like a few little adjustments for certain areas, but for the most part, like plain color. But for the teeth, I think it's a good justification to have like different colors plugged in there, just because they are very different qualities, right? Like for the skin and the teeth itself. For the coat, I'm using like one in here, but let's see what's plugged in there. I have the roughness map, the same one we saw in there. I also tweaked around here, so basically like bringing down the whites all the way, and then bringing the blacks a little bit offset higher. So basically, like this is for that roughness map we saw. Just like, you know, instead of like painting a brand new map, just like reusing stuff that was painted for something else, like very lazy way to do it. But, you know, trying to get like a fast result. It's the kind of stuff I'd rather have like a fast result and then start like deconstructing it, and I was like and fixing those passes. For example, like eventually, instead of like having those big offsets that I have to do inside of Maya, try to bake some of those within the painting correctly inside of ZBrush and sending the maps. But sometimes it's just like, I'd rather have the map that's a very distinct contrast between like black and white. And then I can just like, depending on the model, I can go like more transparent or less transparent by tweaking those sliders, you know. So for the color, also 0822, again, visually looking at stuff and then testing, right? So I landed at that number. Don't ask me why, but that's the number I'm using. Roughness in here is basically, it's being used as a secondary specular. So if I have my specular here pretty tight at 0.05, I have this one at like 3 times more roughness. So that creates like a double spec effect. And then in that case, I get like a tight spec like that, which is kind of like, it's a little overexposed here. Let's see like that. Let's see like that. So you can see a little bit of the transparency when I start doing this, right underneath there, right here. Right, so you can see some of the transparency map. And you can see that I actually added some yellow to her teeth, but I probably like color corrected it too much. And, you know, probably was trying to fight like the gums in relation to the teeth. That's another reason it's good to keep both separate, maybe like 2 different shaders, because if you make those ones wider, those ones gonna go lighter as well, right? Unless you have a mask to control both, but that's basically what I'm doing here. So it's a tight little spec with a tiny little bit more spec that's a little broader around it. And that's basically the coat in here. And the same index of refraction for it. Let's see, for the geometry itself, I'm using a little bit of AI cell noise in here. And I think it's just to add, so that's the alligator, interesting. I don't even know why I'm using that. And there's a map that I'm using. Oh, I'm using the roughness map, the same map all over the place. It's being used like, see, like this scene is probably not the best example of organization you're ever gonna see. But yeah, this one is being tweaked. Like the alpha gain is very, very low in here. So I think what I'm trying to do is just add a little bit of the roughness on the top in here, you know. But I'm not sure how I'm preventing the roughness from being applied to the bottom part here. Yeah, I think that's it. It's because I have a separation between the black and white for the map. Which one is that? This is transparency, this one, right? Yeah, that's it. So basically like it's affecting basically this area here. So that's what I was trying to do. Like with the cell noise, I'm applying a kind of like a micro bump just in this area here for the gums, and the teeth are being ignored. So you can see like he's breaking up the specular in there when I render. Although the resolution is kind of crappy here, but the teeth is still pretty much like mirror-like, but the gums are, you know, definitely has a little bit more breakup, and it's being created by this little cell noise in there. And that's basically it. I mean, like for the teeth, yeah, like you can pause later the video and see like those settings in there and see the, you know, how I painted the maps and everything. But it's gonna be like very custom, as you can tell. I mean, like I tweaked those maps a lot inside of Maya, and it basically like works for my own scene. Unless you do a much better paint job like in ZBrush, and then you get maps straight away and just like plug and play, you're definitely gonna have to poke around with those values, you know. You can see like the micro bubbles here. It's like just tiny little things. I think they're still there. Let's see, saliva. Yeah, so it's still there. Like it's a lot of them that I brought in here. But when you render, you only see those little hints like that. Just adds a little bit more complexity to it. It's like tiny little bubbles right there, completely transparent. So that's basically it for the teeth. So let's take a look at some of those other scenes you mentioned, like the clay stuff. Let's see if I can open a good one here. Let's see this oracle guy. Let's see this one. Now that I have my aces set in here, I don't know if it's gonna work for everything. Actually, let me just save the scene again in case we need to go back to it. And let's open this. Let's try. Oh, that's a good one. Look at that. I was doing some tests and I ended up like overriding my latest file. So I remember when that happened. Look at that. I did this like in 2018, in January 2018, and I was poking around last year around this time, like actually it was around July, and I was like, oh, okay, and then I saved the file. I was like, holy shit, I overwrote the newest file I had with the scene, but this one here should have enough information. Let's see. Sometimes it happens. But who cares? Who cares about those files anyway? I remember like when I did like last year, I decided to do like a backup of my entire collection of files and projects. And I didn't have any backup for any of my stuff, you know, for about 4 years, I think. And then I was like posting all this stuff online and all, and like no backup. And then I mentioned, and someone like, dude, you have to get a backup. So I got like a Google Drive, and then I decided to actually back up everything. And now with the company, I actually have this this Google G Suite, and then basically everything is in the cloud. You know, it's like if you guys are good hackers, you can have access to everything I have. It's there. So for this scene here, actually it's good that I'm seeing this scene because this has that geometry I mentioned to you guys the other day, the soft boxes, right? So I built this geometry. Look how cool. So I built this one, and I have my little grid in front of it, right? With a little bit of depth in there. And my lightning here is basically like one of those mesh lights, which is like, just like I said, it's like just super simple like this, right? And then I have actually 2 of them like that. The cool thing about them is that it really adds some complexity to the reflections, right? When you saw the render for this guy here, let's see if I got the, let's see the front one. This one. So look at that. See the little grid right there in the eye? That's pretty cool, right? But the thing is, like, it's not only the eye, it's actually adding that same kind of pattern all over the place. You don't see because there's a lot of breakup in the skin, but it definitely adds a little bit of more complexity just by having like something like that, right? So that was the intention, like back in the day when I built this in 2018, to create like a little bit of more of simulation of a studio lighting, right? For the curtains in here, what I used was in cloth inside of Maya. So you just like build one plane in there and basically like rig the top of it. And then what I did an animation actually. So I put this cloth in here and I put a plane, and the plane I made to collide with the cloth. And I made this kind of like in the diagonal. It was kind of weird the way I did. I made a diagonal and I made it fall towards the diagonal plane. And then when it fell towards the diagonal plane, it started to create this kind of nice pattern like that. This is all inside of Maya. And then I actually baked it, and then I started like duplicating. So I made like this dome, basically like it's the same geometry, just scaled differently. So that's kind of like the way I did this cloth in there. The model itself is pretty high res. It has like, let's see, 8 million polygons, right? Just for the face, but then you have all this other crap in here. It's probably like gets much higher than this because I didn't want to spend too much time. This is one of those projects I want to do a sculpture like in 1 night or 2 nights to look like clay. And then I just want to render. So it was exported like high res like that. So let's see if we can try a render here, if it's gonna do anything. I hope it renders without any problem. There are no maps involved, at least that. So let's see if we can get anything to render correctly. And then I can show you like the settings for my lighting and the positioning and all that stuff. Yeah, this should be all inside of RGB color space. Okay, it says it's rendering. Oh, and again, it's probably like it probably has some depth of field, which we can try to eliminate straight away so it doesn't choke. Yeah, definitely. There you go. Okay, there you go. So my intention here was to try to simulate like the um, uh, NSP clay, and that would be like the red one and the yellow or the green one. So what I had, like I had my own clay here in the office at that point, and I was just looking and trying to, you know, imitate it under the lighting that I had in here in the office at that point as well. But yeah, it turned out pretty cool. I mean, like it's when you see the renders themselves, they look kind of cool. But obviously, there's a lot of post-processing as well involved. So let's see if I get something like, this is basically like a raw render right here. It looks like this, right? But then the post-process version looks a little bit more like this. So there's more sharpness added. See, like between this one and this one.
Are you using your same carve brush for kind of like the knife?
No, let's take a look at those brushes, man, because they're pretty interesting. Yeah, it's all custom brushes, you know. It's like all of those I sculpted in a plane, and I transformed them into brushes. But I'm gonna show you some of that. So basically, like, let's just finish the scene here, show you like how I have everything set up. So for the lighting, my setup from the top, let's see, go to the top here. It looks exactly like this. So it's kind of like a 45 degrees roughly. And then in terms of the positioning, so the back one is kind of like big, it's a big soft box, 45 degrees from the back. And this one is kind of like a 45 degree kind of Rembrandt light, like just get that little triangle under the eye. And then in terms of the settings for each one of those lights, let's see what I have here. So this one here, I'm using like, probably like trying to see like in the render itself, how it would turn out. So this one has exposure is 7.2. And because it's a small source, this one probably has a lower intensity. Yeah, it's lower intensity because it's a bigger source. And then this one is being, I'm colorizing this like towards a little bit more blue. It's a little slightly bluish. This one is a little bit, yeah, it's like very similar to each other. It's 8,000 Kelvin. This one is about 8.6 or 8,600 Kelvin. And I'm using a fair amount of samples. Normally I use like 2. And I think when you use this grid in front of the light itself, to be able, so for the light to be able to spread correctly and go through all those little holes, you have to have more samples. Otherwise, like, you're gonna create like all those blocks in there, and then you're gonna get a lot of noise projected into the model when you have like something like this. Because imagine like there's a lot of shadowing being produced by this little grid in different places. It's kind of like a diffuse shadow. And then you're gonna get a lot of noise if it's just like if you have like little like low samples. So I'm using 4 and then 5 for that one for the samples. And the scene is, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. Like it's just a matter of like using like, you know, end cloth and then if you want to try to build those guys, it's pretty cool, you know. It's like, because it looks like a physical thing. Eventually I want to build like even the tripod and stuff, and just so in the reflection it shows up, you know. But it's a little overkill. It's a little bit overkill. So let's take a look at those the sculpting techniques in ZBrush, which is always an interesting thing to look at. Let's open this one, and then let's explore that same scene, and then I can show you a bunch of the brushes I'm using. So Oracle. Yeah, it's a thing that I'm not doing for a long time now, like doing those pseudo clay sculptures, you know. It's like I really miss this because it's very freeing. It's just like do something in a night or two, you know, so I can get it rendered if you have like a nice little setup in there. So the model looks like this, you know. You can see like that when I carve in here, there's a little border that's being produced as I carve, and then everything looks a little bit more realistic when you do it that way, right? So if you look at the render itself, all this stuff here, you see like there's a border, and it's fairly, you know, realistic when you look at the clay sculpture that was just scratched, right? And what sells the sculpture as well, it's basically like trying to pretend that this is like it's a physical thing, right? Like basically I'm constantly looking for my center by, you know, scratching in the middle, sketching like the base of the nose, things like that, things that I would probably do like with the clay and with my tools. But then, you know, just by imagining, playing pretend basically with the surface. In terms of the brushes themselves, I have a bunch here. Let's test like in a plane, for example, so you can see. I have this one that says clay real marks, right? And then the way it works is like this. Let's do like a plane. Let's make polymesh 3D. This guy here. Subdivide to 1,000,000 polygons. So if I sketch in here, yeah, I get this type of result, right? It really carves pretty nicely. So I get like all those little borders in there. So basically what I did, I sculpted, let me just switch to the drag rectangle. And let's make this very, very strong. So 10, let's go to 100. So I sculpted this by adding some forms, for example, like, oh, this is too strong. You know, it's like some clay bits and things like that, just with insert brush. Basically, like I inserted a bunch of like little spheres and stuff, and I started like poking around. And this is probably like a stronger than I had before. Probably like I sculpted it around. Let's try something like that. So started with the sculpture in a plane that looked a little bit like this, right? And then obviously I have my focal shift in here. So it would be something more like that, probably going all the way across. And then I capture that. It definitely has to have more depth than that. It was something in between here, like 35, something like that. But it was very similar to this in terms of the sculpture itself. So once I have this with the right amount of depth that I like these little borders in there, then I plugged this one, I transform it to freehand. And then in the stroke itself, the modifiers here, I have roll and the roll distance at 1. And then that way I can actually sculpt. Let's see. This one is at 10, I believe. Let's try. That way when I sculpt like that, I can get this nice little scratches. If I want to do like scratches right in the center of the model, I can do like very, very thin little lines like this, similar to what I have here. So if I switch back to it, anyway, that's just such a long time since I touched this model last time. Actually, I did a little bit during the summit in 2018, but so for example, right here, if I want to carve this area, dynamic brush on, let's get a little bit stronger, like that. Oh, it's shooting across, probably using the lazy mouse thing. So yeah, so basically like that's the brush that I use to carve stuff for the most part, and it was handmade, right? So just a matter of like looking at the references of stuff, you know, it's like how when you look at an image of like someone, you know, it's like a sculpture that someone did, you know, those scratches, how they look like. It seems like when you scratched clay, right, obviously you're gonna get a little bit of that border going over. So I think my process was just like observing a couple of sculptures and trying to capture that feel for it. So this one was the first one I created that I call like clear, real marks. But then there's this real rake in here, which is basically the same thing. It's the same alpha, just multiplied. Like in Photoshop, I actually copied it and I spun it a few times just to have like different rotations. But it's the same principle. Basically, like if you go to here, the plane itself, it's the same principle. So basically it scratches like a rake and it creates that little border as well, right? So basically like that was the process. So if I do this multiple times, you get this kind of like organic feel. I try not to go over too many times, right? I'd rather just like do, you know, it's like kind of separate like that. But maybe what I could try in the future, instead of like using the standard brush as a base, I could try to use the elastic brush and see if that would actually create some kind of like different effect to it. But that's basically like the second one in there. Then I have this clay scratch, which is basically the same thing. It's just like slightly different settings, and I use for the small marks. So basically like for the small ones to create like real scratches. So that's basically like the ones actually those ones are the ones I carved like in the middle of the middle of the model. So, you know, same thing. It's the same sculpture. This one is actually a little longer. Maybe this was the original one I created, and the other one is just chopped in half. But it's basically the same alpha that initiated the whole thing. So this one, and then I have another one that I did. Let's see, this guy here. So I have this clay thin layer. And this is an interesting one because instead of like using the clay buildup, is that the one I have? No, this is like, yeah, this one is basically like, it's this layer, what's one's that, like maybe the flattened one. There's one, let's see, which one's the brush that I was using?
Trim Dynamic?
Is it trim Dynamic? Probably is. I think it's one of those trims, but it's combined with the diagonal alpha. So when you go over this stuff, you can create some interesting effects like that, like really, you know, it's like trying to create those little planes, almost like you have a spatula or some tool like that. So yeah, it's probably like one of those that clean trim dynamics just with the diagonal map assigned to it. And then, so let's see, for the clay rake elastic. So this one here, I don't even know exactly what's plugged in there. Seems like it's busted. Because this one was supposed to be that same rake, but for some reason it's busted in there. This one, the intention was to actually add some texture under stuff without destroying the form itself. So you see, I'm actually going over here, but it's not destroying it, because that's the advantage of using the elastic brush, right? And then there are a couple of things. For example, this crack here, it's a brush that, you know, I don't know where I got. I think this one is the only one I didn't make. I think this one I got from somewhere. But let's see. I think that one is being used, to tell you the truth. I think I used this one that I made, which is this one here, custom made, which has like this interesting, every time I was sculpting those things and I thought about clay, I thought about like, oh, those borders have tiny little pieces of clay. It's almost like there is a little sphere with clay in there. And then with the clay build up, I actually squashed them a little bit just to get them a little flatter. It's almost like you know, like when you have those tiny little pieces of clay all over the surface, and then you just like go with your thumb over and you get those types of marks. So that was my thought in there. And this one is useful for areas of, you know, like you have like different forms connecting to each other. For example, like corners where you think like, for example, in the real world, if you have like those pieces and you're just loosely putting the clay everywhere, eventually it's going to crack at some point. So for example, areas of connection like this, I can just add let's see if I can find a better one. Let's see. So for example, around here, you can add a crack in here where you think like, yeah, the clay would break around that area. So add a little crack. I'm probably going to be able to find some of those somewhere around the model. Here, there is one right there. So like really adding little cracks. Try to be careful though, like not to exaggerate too much, and make sure that you know, it reads as an area that has some kind of stress in there, and get those little cracks in place. So let's see. This is another one, and then I have my the fingerprint. So all this fingerprint here is an interesting one because I could have done like simply with you know, it was like a simple press. But what I did, this one I didn't build like from scratch because it's a generic fingerprint I found on the internet. So I brought this one in here, and then the first thing I did, I made the fingerprint like into a plane, like just projected into a plane, and then with the move brush, I actually turned like some of this stuff a little deeper right in the middle, like that. So I add a little bit of depth, and I sculpted some stuff to kind of like remind a little bit, like this is as done with the clay build up, this stuff too, all clay build up, to pretend that there's some kind of like stress, like from the, for those little wrinkles in your finger being introduced in there. Same with this, like lifting a little bit the borders. And if you look closely, this side is a little deeper than that side. Just like the intention was to create some kind of illusion of pressure being added. So if you look at the fingerprint, if I put it in here, right, kind of like always has the pressure on the side in there. I mean, I could have like multiple different variations for it, but that's basically like the intention. Always trying to mimic stuff that you see, real life. So this one is the clay H polish rake. So I have an H polish brush as a base, and I have that same map plugged in there. So basically this one, you can actually rake as it makes everything planar, right? So if I go over those lines, I'm erasing them with the rake. It's kind of like it can build up as well if you use Alt. So it's just a little extra texture for it. The other ones here, let's see, like crappy stuff like the iris, right? If you want to put like a simple iris in there so you don't need to sculpt every time. So that one, I have another one that kind of pops out like that. Very simple stuff. So if you have an eyeball, you just like straight away, just put some iris in there. Then I have this clay mark, also sculpted by hand. Also by looking at some sculpture, random sculpture, and seeing those, looking at those forms around. And this one is pretty cool too. Always like when I'm using those brushes, I don't use them randomly, right? I try to incorporate into the structure of the model. For example, like if I was using my fingers to sculpt this thing, I probably would try to, stick like the tips of my thumb in some cavity in here that I was trying to make a little deeper. And then this kind of brush would be something I would probably use, like, for example, around here, almost like if I just like went to the tip of my thumb in there and just carved a little bit in there. So try to imagine like where they would fit better. It's like in areas of cavities like that, they would do like a better like impression of something that you're trying to achieve with your fingers. So that one is another one. And then I have this clay mark here, also hand sculpted based on reference and stuff. So it looks like this. Clay build up, right? Just raising a little bit in there, fairly random. And also these tiny little dots in here, they make a huge difference. If you're creating those guys, the clay is never like, it's like you're gonna get definitely like some, it's like if you're putting tons of tiny little pieces of clay together, you're gonna end up like with some gaps in between them. So when I'm sculpting those little brushes, I'm thinking about that, see like those little marks in there, as tiny little, almost like little bubbles, or maybe like the dry clay that was just like removed from there and then left those little holes. So yeah, this kind of stuff, same deal, it's like you're gonna look for areas where I probably would, if I was trying to sculpt with my hands, I would be rubbing my thumb around here and leaving marks like that. So, it's like trying to be not too repetitive, right? Like you don't want to do the same mark all over the place, but you can use like a different rotation, a different scale sometimes, and you can get like interesting results by just overlaying them like that. And then let's see, this guy here. So I have this one, it looks very crappy when used as a single thing. Let's just like erase a couple here. So like it looks like this. So it's basically like clay build up again, a few times. Also has a couple of little holes in there. So it looks like a little crappy, but when you use them like overlap like that, it almost looks like you kind of like got a tiny little piece of clay, a little spherical piece, right? And then you just rubbed against the surface, and you just like, with your thumb, you just ran your thumb over it, and you press them down, and then you get like this kind of like little marks into the clay. So same thing. I mean, like this kind of stuff. Let's see if I can find an area that has some of that. So you see some of those marks I had before. Let's see if I use a lot of this one. Probably around, yeah, this one I used another brush I'm going to show you guys. It looks like this. But this type of mark, for example, I could potentially use for this kind of stuff to look like little pieces of clay that was just like rubbing against the surface. Again, like different rotations, different pressure in there. and then you can get something that looks more like that, which is pretty much like a lot of that I used in this guy here. Let's see if I can find it for you guys. I think this is the biggest, the best example of the use of that stuff. Not this guy. Let's see. Rondo. Let's see, maybe temp. Let's see. Yeah, it's probably under temp. Nope. Huh, interesting. Oh yeah, this guy's. So this guy's here, some of like first tests, and you see like those guys are all over the place. They are there, here, here, right? They're all like those little marks, and they are basically like the same brush I was just showing. You know, it works very nicely in combination with other stuff, and not like in isolation, right? So yeah, like those layers definitely work. They look a little crappy here, but when you render with the nice lighting and everything, they really sell it, you know? It looks pretty sweet. And then let's see some other stuff here. The ray marks, clay scratch I already show, thin layer already show, rake elastic too, cracked rocks, this one's not part of it. And let's see, there's some other stuff. Bone texture, clay build up diagonal. This one here is pretty cool. So look what happens when you just add the diagonal alpha to your clay build up. You get something like this. And like raises one side, right? Instead of like having that regular build, you actually raise one of the sides. So you can add like some interesting effects, you know, it's like if you're sculpting on the surface like this. You can add tiny little layers like this, you know, it's like back and forth like this to look kind of like, you know, marks left again, like by pressing your finger and rubbing your finger over the surface, or maybe like a tiny little tool, like a spatula or something, right? So this kind of stuff I can use for this area here. And then you can use like something like a trim dynamic on top of it. And you can get some interesting stuff as well. So let's see, trim, adaptive trim dynamic. Let's see what happens. Soften, and then you can just like introduce some other forms on top of it. So that's the, let's see, skin diagonal, yeah. And then this clay build up. So this is the regular clay build up, just with a little alpha assigned to it, the square one. And let's see if I have anything in the stroke in here. No, it's actually pretty plain. So this in combination, it was like all this stuff combined, depending on how you're gonna use it, you can get a lot of very cool results with this little set of tools. I mean, like I have like what, like, I don't know how many, maybe like 15 or 12 of them. And that's basically it, you know? So the thing that you have to think about if you're trying to simulate clay is that at any time you have to pretend you're sketching the thing, right? You're creating something that you're just starting to sculpt, which is a lie in this case. I sculpted the face, and then I started actually adding those marks to pretend it was kind of like a work in progress. And to create that impression, I tried to, you know, like I said, like center things, create a line right in the middle, make sure that the line is not perfectly square because I'm doing like free form, right? So I can even put like some ones missing the point in there, just to pretend like, okay, it's not a, you know, it's like I'm really trying to search for that middle line, but I'm having trouble, right? And then you have, if you have the lips in a certain place, it was like, okay, let's like add some of those lines like I did right there, right? To pretend that I'm looking for that perfect spot before I start smoothing out that area of my clay. Same for the nasolabial, you know, it's like I can actually really sketch over the surface. So after I have stuff in place, I really go to town, like really sketching things, you know, trying to look for those forms. And, you know, it's like if I have wrinkles in here, I'm gonna try to mark that, right? And pretend that I'm searching for things. If I have like a, for example, like let's pretend I'm starting this sculpture and I'm not sure about the position of the eyes. I can run like a line side to side, for example, or for example in the eyebrows, right? Just to pretend like I'm really looking for that perfect position to place my eyebrows, you know? So things like that, and then really sketch things and, you know, to pretend you're looking for landmarks in the skin. But yeah, just this little brush here does magic, you know? And I know people are asking forever. And I tell people, you know what? I can teach you how to make this stuff, but I'm definitely not going to give you away. Because it's so easy to for people to become so lazy, you know? It's like they just want to reuse stuff that other people made. and spend time researching and everything, and it's great. I mean, like, it's good for you, right, if you want to. But me as an artist, I mean, like, everything about each one of those brushes I created in here, everything here has my own gesture baked into it. I want people to imagine, like, try to add your own gesture. You know, it's like, look for the references, sculpt those things your own way, in a way that when you show your models, people are gonna identify, like, oh, I see this style. You know, so there's a style is very unique because all those things were created by you. You have a different way of doing things than I do. And so if I just give away my brushes, are gonna be like, okay, from now on, everybody's gonna be building things exactly like I do. And then what's the point of creating something that, like, trying to, like, there is an ocean of artists out there nowadays. And with how cheap the technology became, right? Like, everybody has a computer. People are doing, like, CG in iPads now. And then all of a sudden, like, people are going to be posting stuff on Artstation and everything. It looks exactly like the shit I'm doing, just because they're using exactly the same brushes. And then any chance I had to have at least, like, a little bit of original work out there goes out of the window. So I tell people, you know, I have no problem sharing the information, how to sculpt things and how to use them, or how they were built, breaking down the information and everything, but really teaching how to fish. You know, it's like this whole thing about, like, freebies all the time. I don't think it helps anyone, you know, it doesn't help anyone. I had them for forever, like, in my website. I had a bunch of freebies back in the day. I had, like, 13 tutorials for free. I had a set of brushes for free, like Photoshop brushes and stuff. And it just, it doesn't help people. They just become lazy, you know. And then they don't value how things were built. Basically, like, you get a set of brushes like that. If you don't know how to use it, you will get end up, like, kind of like frustrated with it because you don't know how to use them, and you're probably going to shelve them, just like put in your hard drive and never use it again. But if you actually build the brushes yourself and do the research, like how to create those effects, then it becomes much more interesting, because you just you're gonna learn, and then you're gonna value it. You know, it's like when you're sculpting with those brushes, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, it needs a little bit more tweak because it's not exactly like I imagined. And then you go back and then you sculpt and you put a little bit more of noise in the edges and stuff. And it was like, okay, I learned with that process. And then you go to the next one, you build something else, you know, and always constantly learning with the process. So I think, like, that's the importance of this whole thing, you know. I'm very precious when it comes to those brushes because yeah, it took me time to create, and I just don't want people, like, to be doing, like, a copycat version. But definitely, like, I would say, like, I encourage people to do, like, clay renders and stuff. It's just like, I'm pretty sure it's going to look different. It can look better, it can look worse, but definitely going to look different, because your gesture, your own personality is going to be in every single one of those brushes, and the result, the way that you're applying them to the surface, also going to be different, you know. So I really want to see people doing more original stuff, you know. So that's why I don't want to work against myself and against you guys too, you know. I want you guys to create, like, very cool shit, man. So we are kind of like right on time, but I'm gonna put, like, let's say, like, 10 minutes extra, and then we can go over, like, anything you guys want to know, like, if related to some other model or industry related. I know that a lot of you guys work for the industry already, but if you have any, you know, questions or expectations or whatever it is, you know, it's like, let me know, and I'm gonna try to help the way I can. So feel free to ask.
I had one really quick question. It's,
yeah.
Just about the class. I saw, I didn't read all the fine print when I paid for it, but I just wanted to ask really quick. I saw one statement on the site that there's an expiration date if you paid for the lecture class, but is it perpetual, or do we have access to these courses?
Oh, for expiration? There's an expiration?
There was something on the website that said I can send you a link to it, but it just said something about, like, time, about you know, access to the class.
Huh.
Maybe that comes with the website or the way you set it up, but I can send you a link. But I just want to
yeah, send me, because, like, the courses are supposed to be basically, like, there's no expiration date, you know.
That's what I thought. Okay, that's one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because, like, as long as as I have the website running, it should be completely available at all times. And I told my wife, I mean, like my intention is to make, even if you know, the sales go down completely, as long as I have enough money to maintain the systems, I'm gonna go and let's go to course. Let's see here. So courses, if I go to this guy, that's the January one. Let me just double check very quickly here. And so I have my settings, and I have the option to actually do, let's see. So this one, access private course. One-time payment. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't remember exactly where it is here, but it has a setting that you can actually define. For example, like if the enrollment's gonna end or not. But in this case here, guys, let me just check. Like for example, like I have a grouping here, and then the group is for the people in this class. So if I click on it, let's see, January, and then I'm gonna click like randomly in each one. Like let's try Sabrina, the first one on the list. And then Sabrina, for example, here, there is an expiration date. And basically like this one says nothing. So I can set the date, but by default, it doesn't define a date. So if by any means, like if you guys, at some point, you know, it's like you realize like, okay, something expired here. That's not okay. Let me talk to Chris. So send me a message, you know, it's like, and I'm going to check the system, but I don't think you guys going to have anything expiring.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. Awesome.
Yeah, you should be good to go. And one thing, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that's helpful because before this course even started, leading up to it, I was gathering different stuff from all of the previous courses, just because the hair on Stan and Winston, for example, is so different than what we did on this character, and vice versa. A lot of technical differences within the software, you know. So it's really helpful to be able to reference them back, you know.
And I was telling people before, you know, it's like when I was teaching, I think like my second class last year, I was telling them, you know, it's like my intention is to keep teaching those portrait classes, but I don't know how much interest is going to be gathered, right? But in general terms, I mean, like it's the same class, just a different character, but each character comes with a different set of challenges, right? Like long hair, more wrinkles, less wrinkles, you know, darker skin, all kinds of stuff. So I had this idea of giving access to people, not to all of them for free, but I would say like always giving access to at least like 3 of them. So like a full bundle, so they can actually compare whatever they are doing live with the 3 previous versions. And just because, I mean, like trying to show more support to the students, I think it's a good reference material for you guys. And also someone asked me last year, what if I want to, you know, it's like buy something else, you know, it's like if I want to do it, buy another like individual class. And I mentioned, you know, it's like giving away like all of them, I can't. But for example, like instead of like paying $550 for each one of the individual classes, if you are like a former student, I'm charging $150. So basically like I dropped like $400. So it's kind of like, you know, it's like if you, in a couple of months, I model something that you guys are going to be like, oh, I really like this character because he has this element that he didn't explore before. And I think this is going to help me like for this future project I'm doing here. If you are interested to buy anything after this class is done, you know, it's like any release in the future, every time you need to buy anything individual, it's going to be $150 only. You know, I'm not going to charge you guys full price at all. You know, it's already like very nice of you guys to, you know, it's like to trust me to teach you those classes and everything. So I'm just trying to be generous with you guys with this stuff, you know, so yeah. Any more questions? What about the reviews next Saturday? You guys have some stuff to show?
Tomorrow's going to be a long day.
Yeah, long day ahead.
That's awesome. Well, I'm prepared. This time around, I'm going to have breakfast at least, because last time I didn't have breakfast. When I finished the reviews in the morning, I was almost passing out. But I did fine. It's okay. But one thing I learned is obviously to make those groups, those classes with, you know, a little bit more limited in terms of number of people. My intention was to make like 20 to 25 people maximum. But I swear, man, this one was just like a last minute. People like really like, man, I really want to do this one, you know. I was like, and I just like, okay, and then I try like to accommodate everybody, you know. And then on top of that, like, a couple of the students here actually were part of the live class of October, and they wanted to join it again. So I kind of like, you know, okay, let's do this. I don't know if I can keep doing this, because you know, it's like I'm trying to accommodate and everything, but then other people who are trying to take the class kind of like miss that spot, you know. So it's kind of like I don't want people to hoard the spot too much. But from time to time, if people want to do, you know, just like, okay, I want to do another one, then basically like I charge them was the same, like $150 just to join again, you know. But it's a little tricky. I cannot do this every month, but every now and then I can do it.
So what's next for you? I know you're saying you know, you're only in this CG industry for so much longer and that kind of stuff. I saw you were getting you're doing some CNC stuff with one of those companies. Are you planning on maybe doing more traditional stuff or that kind of process for yourself?
Yeah, you know what, man? It's like I come from I mean, like, I used to draw a lot as a kid, and but I became like a banker when I was like 15 years old, and then my life kind of like became that, you know. For a long time, I stopped drawing and everything. So and then later in life, I decided to enter college, and I entered college when I was probably like 26, 27 years old, and I was in college for about 5 years, close to 5 years. It was my last semester, and I had to leave because I got my first job in the United States. So basically, that's when I left the bank and all that stuff. But so in the back of my mind, I always feel guilty that I'm not doing like more fine art related stuff, because I was basically like in college for fine arts, and very different from a college of fine arts, for example, like in Russia or in Italy. You know, it's like actually you have access to good teachers and this amazing, you know, artwork everywhere, right? In Brazil is very limited. There's lots of hacks, you know, it's like passing by professors in there. And then I didn't have like in 5 years one good professor, like a teacher of sculpture, for example. I had a good teacher of drawing, so we did lots of live drawing, but no sculpture, man. So it's like it was kind of lame, you know. But I tell my wife, like, my dream would be like to have some of my stuff like as realized as actual, you know, physical things. It can be sculpture or, you know, anything, or like digital prints or whatever it is. But maybe one day, you know. But the thing is, like, the industry for us here in California is basically dying for a very slow death, like for a long time, right? So for games, it's still pumping. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's Sony, there, you know, all kinds of stuff happening. But for the visual effects, I mean, like, this industry was basically like destroyed by the, you know, what's happening in terms of like outsourcing and overseas working. You know, it's like all those studios opening basically like pods or full-on studios in Europe and other places that are actually offering tax breaks. So the tax breaks are basically like fucking up the whole thing for us here. There's no way to compete, you know. And the tax breaks is the kind of stuff that's so good for the companies, and it ends up being so bad for the artists themselves, because what happens is that they open those tax breaks, incentives, and everything in places that are normally like super expensive. Nobody wants to go live in those places, and then they do that to attract more artists, you know. And then basically like, okay, the company now has this many jobs opening there, so the you know, it's like they are paying less money. The directors are, you know, it's like searching for those places because they get like, the studios themselves get like 50% back, 40% back in rebates when the, you know, kickbacks from government or whatever it is. And then so it basically like the students themselves who come out of school, for example, like, you know, with all this hunger like to learn and to have their name in like any credit of any movie. So they basically go to those places and they work their ass off, and, you know, it's like work late hours and everything. And at the end of the day, like, they go like a couple of months like that, and then 1 year like that, and then they start realizing, man, I cannot even pay my bills. You know, it's like I'm actually working this super expensive place, and it's being really hard. And then they start like getting burned out. I mean, like they are so hungry to show the work and everything and show that they are very good at that they work like crazy hours. And sometimes even like if the studio doesn't demand that, those guys, they just like, they fuck themselves, you know, like just like they just like work their asses off just to show and to kind of like climb the ladder faster, you know. It's like some of them become supervisors very fast just because they're in the studio like 20 hours a day or something. And then they are like shine bright and then they burn fast. And then sure enough, as soon as they leave because they're so tired and not getting paid enough, there is already like a bunch of people in line to fill up that spot, you know. And that's the cycle. So basically in California, for me, I have like no hopes that things gonna get much better. And I'm not planning to leave because we have a housing here. Yeah, my intention is to actually keep doing the classes for as long as it's sustainable, you know, but I don't even know if this is gonna be sustainable for too long, because how many people out there want to learn like digital portraits, you know, or learn something like that you have to put the actual effort to it, you know. It's like there's a lot of very lazy people. They just want like, oh, I want to do like I want to become an internet superstar and in a few lessons, and that's the sucky part, you know. It's like I really try to dedicate myself like to what I do in terms of you know, it's like valuing this legacy of guys like Rick Baker and all those guys who actually did everything traditionally. So I try to emulate that tradition of artistry in everything I do. But a lot of people, they just wanted like the easy way, you know, and the easy way normally gives them instant success, I would say. But then on the long term, you know, it's like the amount of stuff they learn is not something that they can be proud of. It's like, it's just like reusing ready-made stuff, and, you know, so, but yeah, it is a trip for me, first off, to know how successful this whole operation was to this point. I had no idea it would get big this fast. You know, it was like, it got really big very fast for me. And I wasn't expecting that. I don't have a infrastructure. I'm doing basically like everything myself with a little help of my wife here. But I don't know in the long term, you know, it's like, I don't know if this is going to last just this year or maybe like next year. But one thing that's cool is that since those classes are being recorded and put like as offline material, so there is a lot of passive income, you know, that people are just buying the offline classes. So I told my wife, as long as, let's say like a few people buy the classes every year, it could be like 5 people buying the classes every year. My costs like for operation, like in terms of the software for Thinkific, that's the software I use for the website and everything. It costs like $1,000 per year, you know. And then, for example, Maya, I only gonna pay the subscription when I'm teaching the classes. So it's like, it's kind of like on demand, you know. So I don't need like a huge amount of money to keep the site running, because my intention is to keep giving you access forever, you know, like, so you can have access to that stuff forever. Yeah, so I'm just like going with the with the breeze at this point, you know. Saving enough money, obviously, with my 401k and everything to eventually be able to retire and have a decent income, you know, not decent, but okay income, and hoping to be healthy enough for, you know, some more time and keep doing like maybe like some freelance work or whatever it is. But yeah, at this point, life is good in terms of, you know, we have a nice house, and our kids are going so fast now. Soon they're going to be out of the house, I guess. But oh man. Yeah, life goes fast. Yeah.
Chris, related to that, how do you deal with frustration? Yeah, in terms of, you said that, for instance, there are many people coming, supervisors so fast, and maybe you end up being more knowledgeable, right, than them, and they are making calls that, you know, they are not the right calls. They are going to come back because maybe you have more experience and all that. So how do you deal with that at work, for instance?
Oh, this is very common, actually, man. It's like it is a great question, by the way, because we all see, you know, it's like when people come and they are not quite there yet, but they, you know, now they are in a position of power over you. And I think like the way I see it is like very professionally, you know, it's like, it's basically like that person right now is my superior. So basically like I have to do whatever he asks me to do. I don't get into like fights or anything like that. That's the reason I'm at ILM for what, like 13 years now. I'm not like a pain in the butt to work with. You know, I know that some people like to spread stuff like, oh, that guy, like his ego is gigantic. He must be awful to work with. Well, people should talk to my colleagues and ask them directly. You know, it's like, I'm a nice dude to work with, dude. I mean, but yeah, so if someone comes up, the whole thing about the culture in our company is that people are very nice to each other, you know, people are very helpful. I don't see any superstars like, okay, I'm going to hide this information here so nobody's going to, you know, it's quite the opposite. People share a lot of information. We want to make sure that everybody kind of grows together, you know. And then if someone comes up with that kind of, you know, profile, we're going to try to help that person as much as we can. You're probably going to eventually learn more and become actually a very good supervisor. But in terms of aspirations and everything, I learned this with a friend of mine. His name was Marcius. He used to work with me at the bank. He used to say, like, let me be who I am, you know, because the thing is, like, there's this, it's almost like people force themselves to climb this ladder, you know, it's kind of like this ladder of power. And like, I need to become a supervisor in this many years. They set those goals and stuff. And I don't think I ever did this, you know, it's like the only time I wanted to be a supervisor, like in 13 years in there, was for Kong, because I actually built Kong. And I was doing a lot of stuff. Like I was one of the responsibles for, you know, gathering the project, you know, it's like making the 3D concepts and everything that basically like helped to get the project in the house in the first place. So I thought it was well deserved, and I got the credit for supervisor, which was really cool. But I had to split with a colleague, so we had like a co-supervisor role. But I told my manager back in the day, I said, you know what, I don't need this. I mean, like, I don't need to be a supervisor. I just wanted because I thought it was well deserved, but I don't have this aspiration. The thing is, like, I'm an artist in heart, you know. It's like I want to create stuff. I want to make myself happy. I want to be able to touch other people with my work, you know. It's like if they can get inspired or identify themselves or whatever it is, you know. It's really cool. It's like this interaction with other humans. And because I'm kind of like the amount of posts I have on Facebook, you cannot tell, but I'm pretty much like a hermit, you know. I have those classes now. I'm talking to you guys and everything, but my daily life, I mean, I'm pretty much a hermit. I put my headphones and work most of the day with headphones on, you know, it's like at work, you know, and like I have like my social moments with our neighbors and everything, but then I need like 2 or 3 days to just like, you know, just be isolated and stuff. So yeah, yeah, man. I'm sorry, I kind of like went in a different way in there, but yeah, like, in other words, I mean, like, I don't take things personally when it comes to all this stuff, and you shouldn't either. Especially like guys is starting this industry right now, they take things way too personally, and then they end up like super frustrated, you know, because you can see that someone that doesn't have the same knowledge you have doing something, and then all of a sudden he's steering you in a different way that you think you would be much easier the way you know, or like it would be more like more open for, you know, changes or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're stuck to that way of doing that you doesn't agree completely. You know what? I do it anyway. I do it. The only thing I say is if someone asks me, you know, it's like if someone comes to me and says like, oh, what do you think about this? If someone asks me, I was going to say, well, I think this way here could be a little bit easier for us to do it, you know. But I'm not going to try to step on other people's toes if they're my superior. I'm just going to, you know, like, I'm a soldier, you know. And then what I do, I go to my personal work and I do whatever the hell I want. And that when the frustration just fades away. And then the frustration is going to be migrating to a different place, right? It's going to be like a place of like myself being too hard on myself, kind of like, or struggling with something that's not working, you know. It's like kind of like the software limitation or whatever it is. That's going to be my frustration. But my frustration with other human beings, I try to not get into that, you know. It's enough. I know my flaws, in everybody has theirs, you know. So
thank you, man. That's a good way of saying things, definitely.
Yeah. Well, guys, it was a gigantic pleasure to have you guys in here. You know, it's like that was a very nice group of students this time around. It's always like this. I mean, like, people are super nice, like, you know, but this was very chill group. You know, it's like you guys are working hard. I can see your progress. You know, it's like every time I look at our group in there. And I hope this doesn't end here. You know, it's like the group is going to keep going for a long time, and the website as well. We're going to keep interacting from time to time. and I hope you guys like use anything that was mentioned in this class. You know, it's like I was talking to a student today, and the thing was like, oh, I didn't have the time to put in the classes because I'm too busy with work. And I mentioned this from the get-go. I totally understand that. Some of you guys are like superstars, you know, like you're really good at what you do, and when you're that good, I mean, like you don't have a lot of free time, you know. It's like you have to, but at the same time, I mean, like some of you are making the extra effort to actually get stuff done, even though you're busy. I'm pretty busy, you know, it's like with the kids, with the family, full-time job, and then the classes, and trying to prepare all this stuff. And but I still try to make the time, you know, it's like to help you guys, and you know, to make sure that things are working correctly. So I really appreciate when I see you guys really put in the extra mile and pushing yourselves, you know, it's like in getting stuff done. But if you cannot, for example, like let's say like it's not your jam to do like portraits, and you think like, oh, you know what, I don't know if you're gonna use this, I would say like, okay, what about the lighting? Maybe some tips in the lighting are gonna help you with something. Maybe some of the stuff I was talking about, like the maps passes to create a very decent realistic skin. Maybe you can use in your creature work instead of using a human, right? Is that the stuff that makes me excited about, you know, it's like, it's how you're going to be using the knowledge you know, it's like you got to know, you know, within those classes. And I really hope he helps you guys, because it's really a pleasure to see people, you know, improving their work, and especially like becoming more successful in the stuff they do. You know, it's like I had a few examples during the classes in the past months. You can see the work, you know, that some of the people were doing like before the classes and after the class, and it's like such a big difference that made for them, and to the point that they got jobs, you know. Just, you know, it's not a promise that you guys gonna get jobs or anything, but if you put the work in there, if the result is really nice at the end, I mean, like I definitely gonna be plugging this on my Instagram, like I do with the work of my previous students, you know. And you guys should do the same. As soon as you finished your work, post on Instagram. I'm gonna repost for you. Post on Artstation. You know, it's like if the work is good, I'm pretty sure people are gonna be keeping an eye out for it, and definitely gonna get like more followers and make more friends that way as well. So, all right, guys, thank you so much again. And if you come on this Saturday, we talk again. If not, it was a pleasure again. Thank you so much for the support and for the trust that I would be able to teach this to you guys. And yeah, have a great one.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you
very much, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome class, man.
Oh, thanks, man. Oh, and by the way, like if you guys feel like it, there's a spot in the website you can actually do like a kind of like put a little review. It has like 0 to 5 stars, and then you can put a little note. Doesn't need to write any fancy text, but it's kind of cool to have a record, because this is actually recorded within the class itself. Just if you feel like, you know. But thanks for everything. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Chris. Bye.
Bye, Sabrina.